All right, today we are unpacking a truly cinematic office drama. I mean, this is a story that perfectly captures that absolute heart-dropping, stomach-sinking moment when you realize you're actively being framed at work. It's an incredibly gripping narrative about an employee who uses the raw digital trail to systematically outsmart a deeply toxic boss. So I want you to really picture this. It's 8:43 on a Monday morning. The office is incredibly tense. The rain is just hammering against the windows of those glass-walled meeting rooms, and an employee named Emma Ward opens a highly critical project folder only to find that her final, meticulously prepared file is completely gone. Not moved to another folder, not accidentally renamed, just gone. And the crazy part? Just 23 minutes later, she's standing in a room full of high-level executives about to completely take the fall for it. Throughout this explainer, we are going to break down exactly how this trap was set and, way more importantly, how Emma used a simple audit log to absolutely dismantle it. So we start right in the thick of it. Right in the middle of this suffocating Monday morning meeting where Emma Ward is being publicly blamed by her manager, Grant Hale, for this missing, highly critical Project Atlas file. And notice how Grant plays this. He doesn't ask her what happened. He doesn't pause, to maybe ask IT to check the system, which is what a normal manager would do. Nope. Instead, he stands at the head of the table in front of the entire executive team, calm, but just freezing cold, and delivers this devastating accusation. He actually says Emma was the last person responsible for that file. This is negligence. It's such a calculated move, right? It's entirely designed to turn the entire office against her instantly and effectively end her professional credibility in one single meeting. And the silence in that room, you can literally feel it. It is deafening. Everyone is just staring at Emma, waiting to see if she's going to crack under the intense pressure of being thrown under the bus so publicly. And this brilliantly illustrates the central conflict of our story. It perfectly captures a really harsh reality in a lot of modern corporate environments. When Grant uses the word owner to describe Emma's relationship to that missing file, the word lands incredibly heavily. Because, let's be honest, there is a stark difference in how that corporate buzzword is applied depending on the actual culture of your workplace. In healthy offices, ownership means mutual trust, right? It means you are fully empowered to guide a project to success and you have your team's backing. But in toxic offices, oh man, being the owner of a project is way less about trust and way more about just having a really convenient scapegoat when things inevitably go wrong. Ownership literally becomes a rope to hang you with, and standing in that meeting room, Grant was expertly tying the knot. But here's the thing about Emma. Her reaction to this very public execution wasn't panic. Honestly, it was preparation. Because Emma wasn't always this guarded, cynical employee. If you look at her history at this company, she used to be the person who stayed late to fix broken dashboards and quietly corrected other people's reports without asking for a thank you. But she had learned the absolute hard way that staying quiet and relying on your memory or people's goodwill is dangerous. She had been burned before. We're talking stolen credit, her name mysteriously getting erased from major presentation decks right before the meeting, and late-night files just being blatantly overwritten by accidents from colleagues. After all those betrayals, she realized something absolutely crucial. In a toxic environment, being a good professional does not mean staying silent and taking the hit. She learned she had to protect her work. She learned you have to keep receipts. Okay, so to really understand why this file suddenly went missing in the first place, we have to look at the motive, because files don't just walk away. The root of this entire massive conflict was actually a $240,000 delayed cost timing manipulation. Emma found this in the budget just 2 weeks before a massive make-or-break board review for Project Atlas. And to put that into perspective, this was a project that would literally determine the expansion budget for 3 whole departments, so the stakes couldn't be higher. Now, this wasn't missing money or outright theft. It was a very clever, very sneaky timing manipulation designed to make the quarterly report look, well, much cleaner and more profitable than it actually was. Grant desperately needed this project to look completely flawless for the executives. Not accurate, mind you, but perfect. And Emma discovering this $240,000 gap completely threatened that perfection. So that brings us to the digital standoff that happened on Friday evening. This is exactly where the trap begins. Just look at how this plays out. Check out the timestamps and the tone here. At 6:12 p.m., Emma very clearly flags the issue, basically saying, hey, found a timing issue in the vendor costs. It changes the Q3 margin. We absolutely need to disclose it. Just doing her job. 4 minutes later, 6:16 p.m., Grant tries to immediately brush it under the rug. He tells her, do not overcomplicate it. Send me the final file tonight. Basically, drop it and give me the document. But Emma actually holds her ground. At 6:18 p.m., she refuses to delete the disclosure. She says she'll send it, but the cost timing note has to stay in the summary. And after that message, Grant goes completely dead silent. No reply.
This right here is the exact moment the trap begins to form, because Grant realizes he can't bully her into changing the numbers, so he decides he's just going to change the narrative instead. Now, anticipating some serious trouble after that chilling Friday night silence, Emma executed this meticulously paranoid 5-step documentation routine when she finally uploaded the file at 9:38 p.m. She didn't just hit save and close her laptop. First, she uploaded version 7. Second, she saved a PDF copy to completely lock in the layout so nothing could be shifted. Third, she exported the entire changelog. Fourth, she actually took a physical screenshot of the upload confirmation on her screen. And finally, step 5, she emailed herself a summary of the exact handoff. Now, I know what you might be thinking. It might feel excessive. It might even feel a little bit crazy to do all of this on a Friday night when you just want to log off. But as the source material for this story so beautifully notes, sometimes what people call paranoia is really just experience with better lighting.
So Monday morning rolls around, and when Emma logs in, the trap has officially been sprung. At 8:43 a.m., she opens the shared folder just to prep for the morning meeting, and her final file, version 7, the one with that critical disclosure, is completely gone, vanished. But guys, it gets so much worse. Sitting right there in its place is an older version, version 4, a version which, conveniently, has absolutely no cost timing note and no vendor explanation whatsoever. Naturally, Emma's stomach drops. She instinctively clicks on the folder history to see what on earth happened over the weekend, and she is met with a glaring red access denied error. Think about how terrifying that is. Not only was her final file completely replaced, but her access to the folder's history was inexplicably revoked while she was away. Which brings us right back to that public execution in Meeting Room B. When Emma tries to defend herself, calmly stating that she uploaded the final version on Friday night, and even mentioning she has the confirmation, Grant doesn't even blink. He doesn't miss a single beat. He completely dismisses her evidence in front of everyone, delivering this freezing line, "A screenshot of an upload does not explain why the board folder now has the wrong file." It's incredible. He actually uses her sudden lack of system access against her. He creates this brilliant cover-up dressed up as just strict risk management. He even goes so far as to suggest that if a senior analyst can't maintain basic file control, well, maybe she shouldn't be on the project at all. It is literally a masterclass in corporate gaslighting. And unfortunately, the ugliest truth about toxic offices is revealed right here. When blame enters the room, coworkers rarely ask, "Is this fair?" They usually just ask, "Am I safe?" And they look down at their notebooks.
But here is the thing. Grant made one massive, fatal mistake. He did not account for Maya. Why would your access to folder history disappear only after the file disappeared? This absolutely critical question was quietly posed by a junior analyst named Maya, who pulled Emma aside after that brutal morning meeting. Maya had been paying attention. She noticed Emma's comment about suddenly losing folder history access. And, crucially, because she was junior, Maya still had backup owner access, a permission setting Grant had completely forgotten to revoke when he was covering his tracks. When Maya asks this question, the entire energy shifts. It goes from a state of panic to a methodical, clinical investigation. Because they both realize files don't just delete themselves and then simultaneously revoke the author's admin permissions. That requires human intervention.
So what does Emma do? Now, she could have marched right into Grant's office and started shouting. She could have blasted an angry, defensive email to the whole executive team, but she's smart. She knows that truth presented too early or too hotly is just treated like emotion. So instead of reacting, Emma uses this incredibly precise escalation process. First, she messages HR, saying she simply has new documentation regarding the morning's issue. Second, she formally requests the IT manager join the 2 p.m. follow-up meeting. And third, and this is the most brilliant part, she baits the trap by attaching only her Friday upload screenshot to the invite. She completely withholds her full hand. She knows that if she confronts Grant privately, he'll just deny it or call her unstable. No, she waits. She waits until absolutely everyone is sitting back in that room. When the team reconvenes at 1:57 p.m., the atmosphere in that room is incredibly tense. You can just imagine it. Grant looks irritated, a little arrogant, clearly thinking he's already won this battle. He sighs and says something like, "I thought we had already covered this." But Emma firmly, and I mean firmly, pivots the HR meeting completely away from Grant's carefully constructed narrative. She looks right across the table at him and says, "We covered the accusation. We did not cover the evidence." Boom! With that single, incredibly powerful sentence, she hands the entire floor over to the IT manager, Daniel Price. The executives sit up straight.
because the room is about to see exactly what happens when immutable, hard data collides with sleazy office politics. The room just goes dead quiet as Daniel Price, the IT guy, projects the raw IT audit log right onto the large screen for everyone to see. And this log maps out Grant's exact digital footprints from the weekend. It is undeniable. On Friday at 9:38 p.m., the log shows Emma successfully uploading the final version. Then, early Saturday morning, a remote session initiates directly from Grant's laptop. At 7:16 a.m., he manually moves Emma's correct file to a restricted archive. At 7:17 a.m., he copies the older version 4 into the main board folder. And at 7:18 a.m., he manually, intentionally removes Emma's folder history permissions. He didn't just lose a document. He methodically, step by step, framed his own employee over a weekend morning.
Now, Grant starts to sweat. He tries to stutter through some weak excuse, claiming he was just cleaning up duplicates and organizing the system. But Emma counters immediately. She asks, out loud, why her access was removed exactly 1 minute later, and why the so-called older version only happened to be missing one very specific, highly sensitive thing. And to completely seal the case, Maya, the junior analyst, opens her notebook and places a printed comparison right on the table for HR. This chart proves that version 4 intentionally stripped out the vendor cost timing note and the $240,000 gap disclosure. That was the moment it clicked. Everyone in the room finally understood. The missing file was never the actual problem. It was simply a cover-up to hide a massive financial disclosure. Grant hadn't lost control of a document. He had tried to control the story.
The immediate fallout from this meeting was swift, and honestly, justice was served systematically. The massive board review was delayed by 24 hours just so the executives could sit down and see the real, unmanipulated numbers. The correct file, complete with Emma's essential disclosure note, was immediately restored to the main folder. A formal HR compliance investigation was opened right then and there, and Grant was instantly stripped of his authority and formally removed from Project Atlas. For the first time all day, sitting in that chair, Grant looked significantly smaller than his fancy title. And this whole sequence proved a vital lesson. Confronting a toxic boss requires a clinical, data-driven process rather than getting into emotional arguments. You don't beat them by yelling, you beat them with the law.
But it didn't just end with Grant. A week later, the company realized something really important. Firing a bad manager isn't enough. You actually have to fix the broken system that enabled them in the first place. So, they implemented these new protocols to ensure this specific type of manipulation could literally never happen again. Now, no director can unilaterally remove a contributor's history without formal IT approval, final board files now require a dual confirmation system, and any material changes made after a deadline submission automatically trigger alerts to the whole team. It's not glamorous work, and it doesn't make for an exciting motivational poster. But as the story points out, sometimes justice at work doesn't arrive as a round of applause. It arrives as a boring little checkbox that no one can bypass ever again. This entire narrative perfectly encapsulates a harsh but frankly vital reality of modern corporate life. Really good, hardworking employees shouldn't have to become part-time detectives. They shouldn't have to spend their Friday nights taking screenshots of their own computer screens just to feel safe over the weekend. But when management cannot be trusted, you absolutely must protect your work like your future depends on it, because honestly, sometimes it does. Later on, Maya actually told Emma that the only reason she helped was because Emma had previously stood up for her when her own name was almost erased from a project months ago. It's a really powerful reminder that good people need to look out for each other and help each other keep their names attached to the truth. So here is the big takeaway. If someone is ever rushing you to ignore the official record, slow down. If someone is publicly blaming you before even bothering to check the system, start documenting absolutely everything. Office politics, loud voices, and toxic managers might absolutely dominate the 9 a.m. morning meeting. They might get the very first word, and they might even be able to convince a room full of smart executives that you are the problem. But immutable data, the hard code, always dictates the final outcome. I love this line from the story. The truth does not always speak first, but when it has a timestamp, it speaks last. And so I want to leave you with this question to really consider today. Think about your own professional boundaries, think about your daily workflows, and honestly ask yourself about the receipts you're keeping. Are you relying entirely on memory and trust, or are you relying on the log? Protect your hard work, protect your truth, and never ever panic when you know you have the evidence to back it up. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep documenting your wins, and I'll see you in the next one.